Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men often feel they have to hide, or at least not talk about their parenting role. One thing I know from personal experience is being a lead dad is not a traditional role for men, whether you work full-time, part-time, or devote all your time to your family. Parenting is so often left to mothers or paid caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and create a community for fathers who are lead dads and to welcome other dads who want to learn from them. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan, and today my guest is the most famous lead dad in America, Congressman Jimmy Gomez, who represents California's 34th district. For non-Angelinos, that's the part of the city where the Dodgers play baseball and the Lakers take to the court. He serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee and also on the House Oversight Committee. His wife, Mary Hodge, is Deputy Mayor of City Services in Los Angeles. They have a 4-month-old, soon-to-be 5-month-old son, Hodge. And during the vote for the Speaker of the House, Congressman Gomez showed up to work with his son, Hodge, slung across his chest, and they voted together. The photos went viral. Now, lots of representatives show up with their families as they're sworn in, but there was something about a dad and his son voting as one that resonates. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Congressman Gomez, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I know we got a guest here. I know Hodge is just off camera there, but I've got 3 daughters, 5, 10, and 13, and personally, I'll admit this: I was partial to the baby Bjorn and later a backpack. Where they bang on my bald head. Talk about your sling. Did Hodge have some buy-in and picking it? How did that come about?
My wife and I we got them as gifts. Well, go back before we even had kids. My wife and I were discussing, okay, like, you're a member of Congress. I'm here in LA. Like, I'm going to be watching them 3 or 4 days a week, and you're going to be like coming back, and then you're going to have events. What are you going to do? And I said, well, just give me the kid. I'll just throw him on my back, right? And it was that was kind of like, I always knew I would be wearing them on my back or my chest somehow. Yeah. So that's how like the concept we were thinking about it started. But we got different gifts. We had one of the one with the cloth. One of our friends was really into wraps back in the day when she was doing she had her kid. And then we just tried different ones, but the one that I took him onto the floor with was like a coney, and that was just and that one had straps, so it made it more adjustable. And that one's pretty. He likes it. It's comfortable, but I wear it differently. And I guess I've read that guys like to have their babies facing out, and women like to have the kids facing in. And so for me, that's kind of how we chose it. It was just and then I found one that has like a little seat that I use when I go on long walks, so he feels a little bit more
bouncing up and down.
So but no, it's it depends on which one he likes at the time. But when their head's a little bit not as sturdy, you go with the ones that kind of keep him close. But I think he likes the ones that are facing out, and eventually it's the best thing. Eventually for me, he knocks out. He'll fall asleep if he's not.
Well, I have to ask, though, you obviously had the inside line much more than the rest of us Americans watching the vote for Speaker of the House. I don't think any of us at home thought it would go, as many days as it did, as many rounds as it did. Was he with you for all the votes, or at some point, is there a place for him to nap in the House? What did he do as you went, round and round and round of voting?
So originally, I wanted to bring him onto the floor before he was born. I told my wife I wanted to bring him onto the floor just so that, I'm proud of having a son, even, or a daughter. I don't know what I was going to have. And I was like, okay, whenever they're born, I want to bring them onto the floor when I'm getting sworn in, just kind of as a proud father, as an American, and kind of like have them there. So I took him onto the floor without a sling in the morning when we started at 12 noon. And as the time went on, then my wife was sitting in the back in what we call the Democratic cloakroom. And it's kind of a long, narrow room where there's like snacks and some chairs and people can make phone calls. So he was sitting back there with her. And then as each vote kind of dragged on and it became longer and longer, I was like, okay, why don't you just give them to me and I'll put them into the wrap and go walk around with them. But we were walking around the floor before that, and people were like, my friends were holding him. He was loving every minute of it. So it was, there was a place for him to kind of like chill out in the stroller or with Mary, but it was, I wasn't expecting it to go on and on and on. Like
Sure.
I thought it was going to go on for a little bit, but I didn't expect it. So he was with me that first day, the whole day. And that's when I took him onto the floor for that last vote where everybody kind of saw me with him on the sling. And then after that, he came back a few times I think that was a Tuesday. On Wednesday, he was there a few times. And then but my wife had to go back to work on Thursday. And that's when we were all supposed to go back. This thing was supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And because we didn't have childcare back in LA, and then we didn't have childcare in DC, I said, you know what, just give him, I'll just take him. Sooner or later, I have to be the one taking care of him by myself.
Yeah.
And she's, well, you're going to have to travel all the way back to LA by yourself with the kid. And I was like, that's fine. And so that's how I took him a few times, but on Thursday, I kind of kept him off the floor a little bit. And as well as Friday, I would just kind of walk, go vote, go back to my office and chill out with him. Yeah. And I have a little bassinet there.
I have to say that, Congressman, there's a great photo of you flying back with him, and you were asking for tips on the long flight. I got to tell you this, buddy. He's good now. This is as easy as it gets. Like once he hits 20 months, like fly with him now a lot, build up points, because between like 20 months and 5 years, it's gonna be some form of misery.
No, well, I never understood how close those the rows are until you're like with the kid and you're like, how am I supposed to like hold on to this kid, the baby, on my lap with like when you get a soft drink or a drink, then feed them a bottle. I mean, it is a lot harder than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk to you your role as a congressman, and before we'll get into the assembly later on in the interview. But I have great memories of my congressman growing up in Massachusetts. He was at the time the first one was Eddie Bolin, and my grandfather, who worked in the post office, would take me to events with him. Potluck type stuff. Loved it. And I'm sure Eddie Bolin's replacement is one of your colleagues, Richie Neal. The ranking member on the Ways and Means Committee. I grew up in Springfield, where Richie Neal was mayor before getting elected to Congress. Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about that committee. It has jurisdiction, for people who don't know, jurisdiction over taxation, tariffs, revenue raising measures, as well as some programs, so security, but also enforcement of child support laws, temporary assistance for needy families. Explain to listeners, in your role as a member of the most powerful committee in the House, your role as a member, what can that committee realistically do or not do to help, working fathers and working mothers?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, this committee is extremely powerful, where you have the American Rescue Plan, half of the American Rescue Plan, think of the $1 trillion, I think, or whatever it was, half of it went through Ways and Means. When it came to the Inflation Reduction Act, half of that went through Ways and Means, more than half. And so we have I guess, our fingerprints on just all sorts of different pieces of legislation, especially the massive ones that require spending and revenue. But we also have a lot of the social programs. So the child tax credit, that goes through Ways and Means. That is a Ways and Means jurisdiction program. So that, when we made it advanceable, means that you got paid monthly, and then made it fully refundable, that you didn't need to owe taxes to get that. That was that we did that in Ways and Means, and that cut child poverty from 40 to 60%. Paid family leave, I actually expanded paid family leave when I was in the state legislature here in California. I wanted to work on it in Congress, and people were like, oh, that's nice, right? Because I was a freshman. Like, get in line. But the minute I got on Ways and Means, people were like, oh, okay, because paid family leave goes through Ways and Means. So a lot of these, like when it comes to how do you subsidize childcare, that will go through Ways and Means. So the tax code is powerful, but it's also the social safety net. When it in the in that committee. So it does have a huge impact on families. A lot of people just don't know it, but it is where a lot of the big pieces of legislation will go through.
Yeah. And you mentioned the child tax credit, and you were vocal in one of the votes. You're obviously voting for Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, for speaker. And in one of the votes, you said that you were voting on behalf of you and Hodge, and you said that one of your goals was to expand that child tax care credit. If I'm correct, it's $2,000. Is that correct per child? Yeah.
Yeah,
and there was a proposal to increase it to more, but that got by. And I asked that question again. Please take this in the manner it's meant. 2,000 better than nothing. But all my kids are in school now. But last year, the cost of pre-K for my now 5-year-old when she was 4 was $12,000 a year. Now that may sound like a lot of money to some listeners, but that was $300 a week. So that's not crazy when you think you only have 10 kids in that class and 2 teachers, and then whoever runs the school, they got to make some money. What do we do here? I mean, $12,000 is beyond the possibility of many American families to pay. $2,000 is better than nothing. But can Ways and Means do other things, have other levers to help these families so that both moms and dads can work and care for their kids?
Yeah, it can. So the child tax credit is one part of it. That is just it helps families essentially live a little bit easier. And the way we're right now, it benefits basically people who work enough that they owe taxes are the ones that benefit, right? The people that are lower income, that are often don't have the child care, that are struggling more, that are like worried living paycheck to paycheck, that's who it kind of leaves it behind. So if we kind of just tweak it a little bit, I mean, think about it, 40 to 60% cut in child poverty just by 2 little policy changes within that program. But that's one part. When it comes to childcare, we want to start looking at how do you help underwrite childcare, make childcare more affordable, and that's usually through a tax credit or some kind of underwriting of it. But you still have the same problem. Like, so we had that in Build Back Better that didn't make it into the Inflation Reduction Act. You still run into the situation where how do you help people that don't make enough, right? How do you subsidize childcare for working families? So there's a lot of policy discussions, but affordable childcare is a must. And we're also in a situation now with the sandwich generation that are taking care of their parents and then also raising kids that are more stretched than ever before. So the child tax credit, and then how do we expand TK that we've done here in California? How do you make it national, and then how do you make it more affordable? Part of it is that we need a workforce. We don't have the workforce necessary to do that. And then how do you make them also living wage jobs? And if anybody knows, like I'm looking for a nanny or a childcare person, but a lot of people don't in those industries don't want to get paid on the books. So for me, that's like my dilemma is that I have to pay. I'm going to pay people on the books because I'm the one in charge of enforcing those tax laws. So, but it does make it a little bit more challenging.
Well, talk about the plan, for Hodge. You're home now in Los Angeles for the break. You're going to go back and forth to DC. Not an easy flight. I mean, it was 5-6 hours. Your wife has a demanding job working for the city of Los Angeles. I mean, what's the plan for Hodge? Does the House representative have a child care option or
yeah. So here in LA, it's a little bit more difficult because people are spread out more. So you have to kind of develop that network. And in some respects, this would kind of sound short, like when my wife tried to sign up to like these little like Facebook groups or whatever around here, they wouldn't allow her in. And maybe it's because they know what we do and think we don't need the help, or I don't know what it is.
Oh, no. So my wife, we live in a town in Connecticut. We live in Connecticut. Jim Himes is our congressman. And my wife tried to get into this group. She needed recommendations to get into the Facebook mom group for my town. And I was like, are you kidding me? And this is one of my pet peeves because it's, I mean, again, people are allowed to congregate however they want, but there should be a Facebook like parents group for each town so that, whether it's the mom or the dad who's the go-to parent, like, I can imagine her frustration of not getting let in. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now what we're trying to do is, my mom was helping us, which was great, but she's 78. And then, and she was supposed to, last week was going to came like where she flew into a different part of California. That's why we didn't have the caregiver we needed during that weekend. So I kept him. I came back, and then she came on Sunday or Monday, and she took over caregiving last Monday. But she had an emergency. She ended up having her like a hernia that kind of became. She had to go to emergency surgery. She's fine. Yeah. But then we basically had to pivot again last week. So we kind of realized is like, you need like 2 or 3 different options because anything can happen at a moment's notice. And we got somebody from a friend of ours who recommended it. But so right now my mom was helping, but we need to find somebody for LA. And then we need to find options for DC if I'm ever there that we can kind of hire them temporarily. But right now it's as I'm home, I take care of them. Yeah. And then next week, I think my niece is going to come and kind of watch him for the week for us. But we got to, and I posted an ad on on a website, and then we'll see what kind of responses I get. But sometimes I go,
well, you're going to have better luck. I mean, he's a cute kid. The whole world has already seen him, voting on the House floor. So.
Yeah. But the minute I say, oh, we're going to do a payroll service, and they're like, oh, okay, I can't do that. So that's I think for me is the challenging part.
But on a serious note, Congressman, I mean, this is remarkable because it is so going to inform the work you do as a working father with a young son. You're not, being a congressman, that's an amazing position. Lots of prestige goes with it. Lots of doors open. But at the end of the day, you got a 4-month-old, soon to be 5-month-old. Somebody has to take care of him. I mean, have any of your colleagues, given you tips? I saw there's a photo of you and Joaquin Castro from Texas there as well. Have any of them given you tips of how they've managed this with childcare and being, a congressman?
Yeah, everybody's situation is different, and it depends on like Ruben Gallegos in Arizona. So cost of housing is extremely low, and he has. Right. We were roommates when he was divorced, and we were roommates, and his son would be there in the diaper with a bottle watching, Paw Patrol, and his dad was sitting there, drinking coffee. It was pretty funny. Like we're just 3 guys chilling out, but so everybody's situation is different. And that's what kind of you get as much information as possible, and then you try to make it work. But a lot of it is getting multiple caregivers, child caregivers, because moment's notice something like happens. I thought one was going to be enough, so you have to have one primary, and then you have to have 2 or 3 backups, right? And then living in DC as well, I have to have different people out there as well. But I guess developing that good network of friends who are in similar situations and kind of go like, and kind of making sure that you ask for help when you need it, because everybody needs help sooner or later. And yes, he's in DC. It's funny, I have more options for some reason. I have more people like, AOC goes, hey, if you need help over the weekend, I'll watch him. So all sorts of people have offered to watch Hodge, but we're kind of picky on who we let.
What is it? But could this be a moment of bipartisanship? I mean, are there Republican congressmen or congressmen who are going to step forward? I mean, on a serious note, I mean, what is that level of collegiality around parents and kids?
I think it's interesting. I was thinking about this, and family policy, you just have a different idea of the role of government, right? Like as a Democrat, I believe government should help make life easier for people, especially working class, lower income individuals. And that means that you have programs that are specifically tailored to help them. The child tax credit, perfect as an example, it's something that was originally a Republican concept. Most people don't know that. And it's and now the Republicans have kind of moved away from it. Paid family leave, who's responsible, like the government, the private sector. So we have fundamental disagreements. I think the Republican plans on paid family leave is like, they were like said you can take money from your Social Security account or something like that, borrow against it. So,
Right.
Which would undermine Social Security in the long term. So that's kind of, we just have fundamental different ideas on the role of government, and that's where the I guess the challenges. But if they agree that it is like childcare, the cost of childcare is a problem,
Yeah,
that's step one. At least that's one. But we don't know if that's the case, because childcare.
What does that mean? Not on the macro level, on the personal, your fan. I mean, are you going to have any Republican babysitters for Hodge, or how is this going to work? Anybody
no.
come across the aisle?
No, like if I grew up in Riverside, California. It was mostly Republicans when I grew up, so it's not having Republicans watching is not a problem.
I think your bar lowers the longer you have to scramble to find childcare, particularly at this age.
Exactly.
When you were in the California Assembly, you mentioned this before. You worked toward paid family leave. Two parts of this question: what were you able to achieve for Californians, and was paternity leave part of that?
So originally, when paid family leave was passed, it was passed in 2002 and implemented in 2004. So it was kind of a revolutionary concept, but it was built off of the state disability insurance program. And what they did is they gave everybody 5 weeks off, 6 weeks off at 55% of your wage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that for a long time. And I believe it did apply both to women and men when they passed it. But mostly women were taking advantage of it.
Right.
And over the years, though, this is where it's interesting. More and more men started using it. So like the statistics show that they like the dads taking time off to bond with their newborn child went up.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. and it went up. So and then they started adding other caregiving. They added like taking care of a sick family member, parents, grandparents, and they kind of expanded the definition of family. But it was a stark increase. And that's when like then you started seeing companies, in order to be competitive here in California, they had to offer paid family leave as a benefit. Most companies were giving it just to women. And then the women started fighting back and being like, hey, if I can take time off, why can't my husband?
Exactly.
So that started expanding it. But the idea of men taking time off to bond with the newborn child or take care of them in California has moved in the right direction. But where they lag behind men is that women are still the primary caregivers if somebody gets sick. So that's kind of like what I did is that think of paid family leave as a three-legged stool, where you need to wage replacement, like 55% of the 55% wage replacement for somebody for 6 weeks that's well off is not bad because you have enough savings, right? But for somebody who's working class, that's living paycheck to paycheck or working 4 or 5 jobs a week to make ends meet, like my parents did, and you're struggling on 100% of your salary, there's no way you can take 55% off for 6 weeks. It's not financially doable. And then, so what I did was I expanded that to increase wage replacement to 70% for all people under 50,000 or less. And then everybody else got a bump to 60%, but because it's not taxed, it's kind of a complicated math. Everybody was getting about 80% wage replacement, which is huge.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then just this year they expanded it and to 90%. So 90% wage replacement. And then the number of weeks, how many weeks you can take off. Yeah. And that's kind of a big deal. I think we increased it in California, but that's really costly. And the reason why is that most of the people that use the program are still upper income, 80,000 or more earnings. People who are earning 80,000 or more. So then you have you have wage replacement, job protection. Yeah. People are not going to take time off if they think they're going to be fired.
The job's going to be gone. Yeah.
Yeah. so that needs to be tight, where like right now, and that's based off of the Federal Medical Leave Act, right? Which is what we do.
Yeah.
That only applies to people, companies of 50 or more. So if you want to like help, you have to have job protection for individuals that are in smaller companies. And then the last thing is just knowing about it. Most people still don't know about the program. They don't even know that they're paying into the program. So like educating them so that they could use the program when it comes. So wage replacement, job protection, just knowledge of the fact that it exists. So that's kind of the stuff like, so even if we pass a paid family leave program nationally, we're going to have to do all those things, protect people's jobs, make sure that the wage replacement is high enough, and then make sure that people know that how to use it, because it's not that easy.
Yeah. I mean, I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago with a chief human resource officer at a gigantic healthcare company that I won't mention because it's in confidence. But she was saying, you know, she did an awful lot to bring in policies for paid family leave at this company. But she admitted to me, she says it was a lot easier to do it for white collar salaried workers than it was for hourly workers. And I said, how is this possible? Like, you are a healthcare company, you're supposed to be doing good. And she said, it's just math. Like a white collar salaried worker, you can get a couple other people to kind of come in and fill in for his or her job while they're out. But an hourly wage worker, obviously the front line of this healthcare company, these are people answering the phones. These are people doing. If you gave the hourly wage workers the same amount of time off, you'd essentially have to pay double. You'd have to pay them X amount of dollars an hour to have it off, and then you'd be paying somebody else X amount of dollars to take their job because you couldn't leave the job unfilled. And that's that sort of conundrum. Is there, when you think about that, particularly now, not knowing it on a policy perspective, which you obviously know from having been in the California Assembly, now being in Congress, but now seeing it and knowing, we'll get into your family story in a little bit, but your family story, but seeing it now as a congressman who's trying to shuffle his own childcare, you know, what do you see in kind of a dream scenario of what could be done either through, you know, through Congress, through the legislative process, or through, you know, private industry to make sure that, you know, dads and moms, but you know, the only dads who get to take time off are not just, you know, white collar dads making more than $100,000 a year, that all dads get that chance to bond with their children and to help out the moms, help out the working moms.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always, when we have debates with the Republicans, I say they always talk about family values, but they never pass policies that value families, and especially working families. And in order to change our mindset, is that we have to kind of think of policies that target those individuals that are hourly workers, lower wage. And the reason why is oftentimes that they're the ones that would benefit, those families would benefit the most, right? They were the ones that would have a greater impact if the father was able to take some time off, or the mother was able to take some time off, that the financial stress wouldn't be there. And we know the statistics about bonding, and when it's done early, it's done often, that the child is healthier in the long term. And so one of the things I want to kind of push is that we have to normalize that understanding that bonding with the child, a father's bonding with the child, does make a huge difference in that child's development. Everybody knows that the mother bonding with the child does, but people kind of discount what it means for the father. But studies have shown that. And then pass policies that kind of help encourage that. I think ideally I would want to say not just 12 weeks, but like 6 months of paid leave in the ideal, where people can take that time whenever they need it, and then spread it out. And then you would have subsidies for the smaller businesses, and then build a program that works for the lower income and hourly employees. It's always easier to pass laws that are for, like, you know, through a tax credit program or something like that, because those people already have enough resources that they're paying taxes.
Right.
So how do you kind of like target them, and then but at the same time target the folks. And the reason why, and this kind of goes back to kind of politics a little bit. A lot of people believe that the system is built in a way that doesn't support them, right? Especially the lower income folks, either the tax system, the social safety net, or education. That they just don't believe that it no longer benefits them. But there's ways we can do it. We just have to change our mentality. And so when it comes to paid family leave, the child tax credit, and even affordable childcare, we have to think about equity. Who needs the most? How do you kind of target it? How do you make sure? But at the same time, making sure that everybody feels some benefit. So higher income folks, you can't, or middle income folks that are not necessarily rich, but are pretty well off. They're getting squeezed too, right?
Right.
And you can't, and you can't have them feel like they didn't get any benefit from these policies.
Right, because that credit phases out at a certain level of income.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's but it's what's great, what's tough at the federal levels, when you pass something, to make a tweak on it will take years. At the local level, if you pass something, or at the state level, you pass something and the policy is just not working right, you can go back and change it within, a 4-year period after you studied a little bit. So that's why it's so important whenever you pass something at the federal level to try to get it right, but understanding that progress is cumulative. Mm-hmm. If we can get any paid family leave program on the books at the federal level, but at the same time still good enough with those targeted helps working class folks, you can build on that on the long term. Like the Affordable Care Act, nobody's going to be they tried over the years to
roll it back,
fund it, to repeal it, and it's too late on that one. So I think that we have to kind of figure out how to get those first policy wins for paid family leave as well as childcare.
And that is so important. But I always say you're at the beginning of the movie. I've watched the movie up to age 13 and a half. And one of the things that's interesting is that it is so crucial to get, paid family leave for both, men and women. But, things don't get any easier after 6 months. I say, like, your kid never ends up in the emergency room on a Saturday afternoon when you have nothing to do. Like the kid always ends up in the emergency room on the day when, everything is chaotic. Is that even something like to think of, like, extra days, almost like, the way we have like healthcare savings accounts now, or the way we have, federally funded programs around our, our 401k plans? Would that even be within the realm of possibility to think of some sort of like, extra bucket of days that caregivers could be old parents who are sick, could be parents, who have young kids, could tap into those days and have like designated time to take care of their children who are 10, 11, 19.
Yeah. Well, that's it's interesting in other countries, in some countries, and even not even like, I'm not talking about like the Scandinavian countries.
I knew you were going to say Scandinavian countries. They always beat us every time. We don't even talk about Sweden on this podcast.
But not even a Scandinavian country. I remember I was talking to a friend, his wife was from Belarus. And I told her about 12 weeks of paid family leave, and she laughed. In Belarus, right? So right. Americans think about think that Belarus was kind of this pro-family Shangri-La, right? It was right. Like, but they offer more paid family leave than the United States, and substantial. And then they can take it at any time. They can take it, when the child's first born.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to a year or something. And then they can spread it out over a period of 5 years. So that's kind of like the thing is like, could we ever do that in the United States? Maybe. But we have to go from one step at a time. I mean, paid sick days is something that we passed in California, like, those 3, and it took us, it was mind blown when we passed that. So I think we do have to think bigger, and then also more flexibility when it comes to taking care of kids and using these programs.
Yeah. Congressman, two last questions. You mentioned your mom, and if I did my reading correctly, I think your mom worked in domestic service, and your dad worked in agriculture. surely two jobs that kept them very busy, working a lot, probably very tired when they got home. But when you look back to your childhood and some of the sort of memories or some of the lessons that you got from your dad or from your mom, what are some of those lessons that stick out for you that have, that guide your work as not just a husband and a father, but also as an elected official?
I thinking back just kind of on my parents is that um this was back in the 80s, but they worked a lot. They worked from morning to night, and I saw them, but I probably wouldn't see them as much as my friends saw their parents. And in the end, the lack of I guess frequency and connection does impact kind of like children, right? Like for me, I was raised by my siblings. I wasn't a model student, by any means. They would call me my aunts and uncles would say I was travieso, like Dennis the Menace, kind of. And so part of it is understanding, but understanding that if you give parents a more flexibility to be with their kids, so that they can, don't have to work that many jobs, right? That's why like having a higher minimum wage matters. Why, yeah. Having to be able to take time off when the family gets sick, and that's one of the things. Like my support. Hey, buddy. My support of paid family leave was based on the idea that my parents, when I was 7 years old, had to miss shifts from work because I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia, and then because we didn't have health insurance, we had struggled paying the bills. So it was kind of, we got hit on both sides, and that kind of informed one of my passions, making sure that we had affordable health care. And then the idea that parents should be able to take time off to take care of a sick child. And those are some experiences that shaped how I view things. And then also understanding working people, right? People, like, parents don't work 4 or 5 jobs a week because they want to. It's because they have to. Yeah. And then, and it stresses them out. Being tired and raising kids is tough. You're already tired.
You're already tired.
And then working all these jobs, it makes it just harder, where you can't really, it's hard to focus when you get home, and hard to, it makes it harder. But it's not it's not the same for everybody. But I know that if people can work one job, each parent work one job, and they can be someone to take care of the kid when they get home from school, they can get dropped off. We're like, maybe it's a little Pollyanna-ish, maybe it's a little 1950s, but I think that in the end it does make things better. But we everything the way I kind of view things is from personal experience.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out if the studies and the reports support that or don't support it. But I do believe that, helping working parents in the end is just better for our country, economically and socially, and just all the way around.
So before I ask you the last question, can you bring Hodge on camera? I mean, he's been part of this.
Yeah, he is getting fussy because it's almost it's an hour before his hey buddy.
There he is. Well, look at that. What's he got on there? Are those dinosaurs?
No,
Yoda.
Yoda.
Oh man, that is
Mark Hamill is one of his followers.
That is excellent. I love it. So with Hodge here, last week you talked about how personal experience has informed a lot of what you've done as a legislator. How do you imagine the personal experience of being a dad to a young kid, with a wife, with a mom who also works? How do you imagine that's going to inform the work that you do, at least over the next 2 years in this Congress?
First, I didn't. I was one of those guys or people that would listen to somebody go, "Oh, kids change your life," and I just say, "Yeah, whatever." And then he was born. I was like, "Oh yeah, it really does kind of shift your focus and which in a good way, where I kind of where I understand that my legacy is this little guy versus what I get elected to, right? Getting
Sure.
elected is an honor, but that's not really in the end my biggest legacy. And then figuring out how to take care of him in a equal footing, or a more equitable footing with my spouse. And it's interesting. Like, I wore him onto the floor just because I wanted to show him off, right? That was it. And walking him around, I would go, and before that, I would baby wear him around the neighborhood, go on walks with him because I enjoyed it. And I think kind of figuring out how to support parents who want to do more of that. Before, it was always kind of like a policy, from a policy perspective, but not kind of from an emotional, right, perspective. And I think that's one of the things that is definitely he's changing. And then the mothers often are the default parent when it comes to a lot of it. So I'm trying to figure out how to play my role, and then and see how it kind of impacts my policy making. I'm going to be more open to different ideas, and kind of how do we develop policies, and I'm thinking outside the box. But he's going to be there every step of the way.
Well, I mean, like you said, what started as a proud, father moment of bringing Hodge on the floor really has had, national resonance. I mean, representation matters. You stood up there as a lead dad, as an elected official in the U.S. Congress, and that made a real difference. So
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I'm very grateful, Congressman, for your time today on the Company of Dads podcast. And Hodge, I'm glad that you joined as well. I think, is this his first podcast? So do I get credit for, is this Hodge's first podcast?
First podcast. So he likes it though, but we're trying to make sure he doesn't get too much screen time.
Well, but once we brought him on camera, he settled right in. He seems to be a natural here.
I think it says this position. I think they say it helps kids when they're stressed out.
Yeah.
So
well, great.
But he's good.
Thank you again, Congressman. I appreciate your time today.
All right. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.